The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
This story was asked that I should repeat over for StoriesToInspire.org. My good friend Rav Daniel, who is the head of that, asked that I should repeat this story. Leilui Nishmat Maran Hagon Rav Shmayo Yosef Chaim Ben Moreno Rav Yaakov Yisrael the Pesha Miriam Rav Chaim Kanievsky. Everyone has fantastic stories illustrating his tremendous Ahavat Torah, his Ahavat Yisrael, Ahavat Hashem. His Hatmada was unbelievable, and how he cared for every little bit and everything. Unbelievable. He was unbelievable. I just want to tell you one story, a personal story that happened. This story happened not to me, it happened to my parents. My parents at that time were living in Lakewood, New Jersey, and my brother-in-law and sister, they moved into my parents in the basement. So you'll see why that's very relevant in a second. And what happened was, one evening, I believe it was one evening, my parents hear some knocking on the window, which was very unusual. They look up and they see there's this woodpecker who keeps banging against the glass of the window of their house, which was making quite a racket. And it's also very unusual because woodpeckers usually, when they peck, they like to peck at a more sound surface, like a wall or a tree. But pecking at a glass, usually it gets reverberations that the woodpecker doesn't like. So it's very unusual for it to peck on a window. So it just amplified the sound, and it was very annoying. And my parents, they tried hiring animal catchers, they tried setting up traps. Nothing worked. The animal was able to avoid all that, and was continuing to peck continuously every single night. Okay. My parents made a trip to Eretz Yisrael, and they're very close with our Rosh Kollel, who lives literally down the block from Rav Chaim Kanievsky, ZTL, on Rehov Rashbam 19, Rav Matisyahu Lesman. Rav Matisyahu Lesman is an unbelievable person. Everyone should get to know him. He's a fantastic human being. And he's a Rosh Kollel, Talmid Chacham. He has many Avrechim that are learning under him in Bnei Brak and Yerushalayim and multiple places, Chadera, Bet Shemesh. Unbelievable, humble, good, very good, sweet person. And Rav Matisyahu Lesman, he found that my parents were in Bnei Brak, in Eretz Yisrael, and he says, listen, I could get you into Bnei Brak. Reb Chaim is mamish a shachen of mine. He's a neighbor. He's literally down the block from mine. I know the best time to go in. So when I call you, just get on a cab or whatever it is, a train, plane, automobile, whatever it is that you need to do, get from Yerushalayim to Bnei Brak. Okay, fine. Anyways, it was Sunday morning. He calls them up very early and says, if you could come right now within the next hour, Reb Chaim is wide open. They blocked off that time. I know he finished his chavot. He had a certain amount of things he had to learn every single day. It was ironclad. And whenever he had free time, he would either write his farim or he would talk to people that needed more time. So he said, I know he finished his chavot because he did it last night or he did it early in the morning. And I just heard that he's available for the next hour. Get here now and I'll be able to take you in. Okay, so my parents immediately, they hightail it to Bnei Brak. And as they're getting closer, my mother turns to my father and she says, whatever we're going to be asking Reb Chaim, different she'elot that we have, should we mention to him the story about the bird? My father's like, don't waste Reb Chaim's time. Don't waste his time. My mother's like, well, maybe, you never know. Anyways, okay, fine. So they go to Rav Matisyahu Lesman's house, they tell him the questions that they have. Rav Matisyahu says, okay, he knows how to say the questions in a very succinct manner. And he goes to Reb Chaim, he starts speaking to him. As he's speaking to him, my mother, she's in a different room, she says a little audibly to Rav Matisyahu Lesman, the bird, Tzipora, the bird, the fegele. And Rav Matisyahu Lesman, he nods, and he points to my mother, yeah. And then he leads to Reb Chaim, and he tells them in Yiddish, he says, and whatever he told my father, he says, by the way, they're having an issue recently that there is this bird that keeps pecking and driving them insane, and it doesn't bother them, and they want to know if it's a siman for something. So Reb Chaim thinks for 5 seconds, and that's like an eternity, and 23 Rashbam, thinks for 5 seconds. He suddenly looks up at my father with his beautiful green eyes. He looks up at my father and goes, does anyone owe you money? My father goes, yeah, a lot of people owe me money. No. Does anyone owe you money that was just niftar very recently? My father goes, yeah, 6 months ago, there was someone from a certain city that a long time ago I did a business venture with him and he didn't pay me back and he knew he owed me money. It was like maybe conjecture, I don't know. person knew he owed me money, and he refused to pay. And he just passed away a few months ago. Chaim looked at my father and said, that bird is a Gilgul. It's a Gilgul Neshama that came down this world to get a punishment, and the bird is asking for you to say that you're mochel. You forgive the chov, you forgive the amount that's owed to you. My father says, if I'm mochel my chov, how am I going to get it back? He says, Al tidag, don't worry about it, you'll get it back. Are you mochel him? My father says, yeah. Machulach, machulach, machulach. Chaim says, okay. Beracha v'atzlacha. Hashem should bless you. And he gave him a very nice beracha. He says, beracha v'atzlacha. He says, because you're mevater and you gave up on that. Okay. No one in my family knew that they went to Rehov Hashbam 23. They did not know that they spoke to Reb Chaim. No one knew. Everyone thought they were in Yerushalayim, enjoying their Motzei Shabbat. 7 hours ahead. It was early Sunday morning, which is 1 o'clock here. No one knew about it. So, my parents, they didn't tell anyone, they didn't post this, they didn't say anything, whatever. They were going to tell everyone later on about this whole conversation. My sister, who was living in Lakewood at the time, in the same house, she called up my mother. She was the first one to call my mother. Early Sunday morning, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You add 7 hours to that. That's 2 p.m. Eretz Yisrael time. And she calls up my mother. And when she calls up my mother, before my mother has a chance to say anything, she says, by the way, Ma, Baruch Hashem, we were able to get a good night's sleep last night because the bird was gone. Just disappeared. My mother's jaw dropped. She couldn't believe that. Literally what Rabbi Chaim said. When you're mochel, he'll go away. Tzadikkim see certain things that we don't see. And they understand that if something is a little peculiar, a little out of the ordinary, we just be like, what is it? No. It's an neshama that's coming back. It's trying to ask something from you. And Reb Chaim Kanievsky was so sensitive to that even he knew that just this little bird that was an annoyance was really saying a very powerful message. And that's what Gedolei Yisrael are. They're able to see something that we perceive as something that is quote-unquote trivial, but by Talmid Chacham, there's no such thing as small things. That's why they're so great. So we'd like to thank stories2inspire.org. We'd like to thank Reb Daniel for encouraging us to say these personal stories of Reb Chaim Kanievsky. I personally miss him tremendously. He was a tremendous role model for me personally, for my family, ultimately for all Klal Yisrael. His Yirat Shamayim, his Hatmada, his Avat HaTorah, Avat Hashem, Avat Yisrael is the most amazing thing that I hope to aspire to be even a fraction of that. And Hashem should give him an unbelievable Gan Eden for what he did for Klal Yisrael, for Hashem's people, and all he did, his selflessness, which was so remarkable. And Bezat Hashem, we should only know of Smachot. We should Bezat Hashem be zochet to the Gula Shlema b'mehera v'yameinu. Amen v'amen.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. Stories2inspire.org